morning, Ian.
Good morning. Good morning, Sherman. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. As you probably know, or I'm sitting in the beautiful Okanagan, Vernon, British Columbia, and great to see your face again. We're pretty excited here in Canada. The Vancouver Resource Investment Conference is coming up in May, and then of course PDAC, which is one of the biggest resource shows globally in Toronto. I've got a couple of my associates that kind of late subscribers to get a booth at PDAC in Toronto. I don't know if you know this, Ian, but it is completely full. There's a wait list now. VRIC, all the booths are full. Toronto, all the booths are full. I'm not sure if that's going to translate into throngs of retail investors, but personally, I think it is going to, because at the last show there was quite a process to get into the shows with your vaccination cards and this and that. So the last few shows, the retail investors haven't been coming out in big numbers, but I think we're going to see that, especially in the Vancouver show in May and then in Toronto. And how are you finding? So I'm everybody here. I'm with Ian Harris. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Libero Copper. Ian and his team have put out some stunning results that we're going to talk about today in his copper project in Colombia. But Ian, maybe just tell us exactly where you're at and how are things in Colombia?
Well, I'm currently in Medellin. I took the decision in around January. So I've been here since June of last year, and then finally just pulled the trigger and said, "We're the family, come on out. We're making the plunge," and we decided to come live in Medellin. But I mean, for various reasons. I think obviously I've worked 15 years in South America. I'm fluent in Spanish, and I think it's the area where I can make the most impact for the value of the company. Maybe a little selfish because it's also known as the city of eternal spring. It's a very nice place to live. Very good school system. I think a lot of people don't really know that it's actually quite a microcosm of business, and there's a lot of entrepreneurship. The banking sector is very strong. So it's a nice culture to be in.
Well, I gotta say, Ian, you look great. I mean, you look real healthy and happy, and I love those plants in the background, by the way. And I was fortunate in November to spend time with Ian in Colombia and in Cartagena, and also in I traveled all the way over to Bucaramanga and did site visit with Ian, in particular at Outcrop Silver and Gold, and also the Macoa property was part of the site visit as well. And maybe with that as just a chance to talk a little bit about Colombia. I wasn't even aware, even though I've got big investments in Colombia, and we've strongly recommending companies like Libero Copper. As everyone knows, copper in our view is a really important part of one's overall investment portfolio, and especially in participating in the battery metal revolution and the electrification that's going on. Those of us that are intimately involved in the copper side, we know that it takes 4 times as much copper to build an electric vehicle than it does to build a combustion vehicle and all that sort of stuff. But maybe just talk a little bit about Colombia. I mean, we're very fortunate to have Ian with us, who lives in Colombia, about how that jurisdiction has evolved over the last number of years to finally find its way to ranked number one or two, I think, by the Fraser Institute in Latin America.
I think if you told people that you went on a 4-day car trip through Colombia, they wouldn't believe you, right? I mean, it's obvious that Colombia has made a massive transformation in terms of security and opening up. It's putting significant amount of investment into infrastructure to get, there's multiple very million plus cities in Colombia now kind of getting out now that the country is really opening up. And I think that's probably the first surprising thing. And so, and just a teeny bit of background, I lived 6 years in Venezuela. I was 6 years in Ecuador. And a big, one of the biggest things for me is leadership. right? At the end of the day, when we got the Mirador project into the start of construction and went on to be the first large scale mining operation in the history of Ecuador, the biggest part of it was having the political will and the leadership to make sure that those projects move forward, right? And that had to be created over time. But in Colombia, you have a president coming out. I think he recognizes the biggest 60% of all exports. The biggest contribution to government coffers come from oil and coal. And a lot of people don't even know the coal part, right? It's the fifth largest exporter of coal in the world, right? And it's obviously the largest in South America. But I think they recognize, that the world is decarbonizing. And that it's been focusing on the coal sector, the gold sector, and probably the nickel sector with a significant nickel production within the country, and saying, geology doesn't stop at borders, and that this very prolific Jurassic belt goes right into Colombia, and that it's now time, let's a clear desire to diversify the mining sector, a key component of the reactivation of the economy after COVID. The economy of Colombia is doing fantastic. It really is. And then throwing down a gauntlet, saying I want to be the third largest producer of copper in South America, considering there's almost no production today. Most people are like, "What? You crazy?" But I think the results from yesterday demonstrate that this is not a pipe dream. This is serious. That there's a significant endowment here in Colombia, and it requires exploration, and it requires moving forward, and it's going to be a key component of the economy, of the decarbonization of the energy sector, and the revolution, and a key part of the economy.
Excellent. Just for our listeners, the 4-day car trip that Ian refers to is an actual 4-day car trip that I did against, some people are going, you're going to drive? Most people that aren't from Colombia were questioning my desire to drive across Colombia, for various reasons. Number one, I could just plain get lost, I guess. But, part of it was to experience, what these communities are like, and what the countryside was. And I'll say it was an absolutely, fantastic trip. And I've mentioned this on other calls, I was very impressed with Colombia, just the overall mineralization, the quality of the people. And, as you know, Ian, I've got a great relationship with Tim Moody. Tim Moody's the CEO of Pan Global, another excellent story, as high quality as very similar to Libero with a big discovery in Spain. And Tim Moody, he was the head of Rio Tinto exploration, so he was on the board of directors level, and one of the countries that they were opening up, or not, where Rio Tinto was quite interested was Colombia. So I think it speaks to the quality of Colombia as a jurisdiction. But I mean, the real focus today I wanted was to hone in on is this stunning first hole that you just put out. I think it's incredible news. I mean, I've been an investor with Libero Copper for I think since the company was originally set up. And Macoa was one that was always really exciting. And then of course maybe give us some history on the Macoa copper project, and then obviously this initial drill hole, which looks fantastic.
The Macoa project was last drilled by B2 Gold in 2012. That's about a little over 30,000 meters into it. And Libero acquired it in 2018, right? And at that time, immediately did a resource estimate off that drilling work, came up with a 600 million plus deposit with over 4 billion pounds of copper, 500 million pounds of moly. I mean, to put that in perspective, world moly production is 600 million pounds per year. So, I mean, you almost got a world's production inside the deposit. It gives a concept of the size and scale. But, I'm a mining engineer. So I've got 25 years working in the industry, and I joined the company in January of 2021, mostly focused on the Macoa project, but also the portfolio projects based on the work in Ecuador. But it probably was a little early to do the resource, and then that was something that kind of just ate at me for a while, right? That's the clear demonstration we can say of this is what the project represents. But it was probably just a little too wide, and some drop off of grades. There's whole areas above it that don't have grade that shows up at waste, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought it was a really poor representation of the deposit. And it really, this might sound silly, especially to a geologist, but the resource is where the drilling was, right? Every hole pretty much hit mineralization. It's open in all directions. So really, it's hard even to say we might be just looking at the foot of an elephant. So when we went in with this first hole, and let me take another step back. And then it was drilled by B2 Gold. It was a metals project, not a gold project. So really, I think I've been spending the last year telling everybody about how wonderful this project is. And at the end of the day, it just seems, well, I believe you. Tell me when drill results are going to happen, right? So it was always seen as the key catalyst. I think there was a lot of believers were built over that time, but the key catalyst was drilling, right? Even when we said we're going with geophysics, drilling starting, everything, it's still just kind of was waiting around until people, okay, Ian said this date, and the date where, the expectation for drill results come out, that was the real catalyst. And so we had multiple goals, but obviously one was to demonstrate the quality of the project, right? It goes through multiple zones in the resource model. There's a kind of a big hole between some of the high grade sections that we believe perhaps could connect up. And we also wanted to go really deep to provide that geological knowledge, right? It's a complex deposit. You have sericite with potassic alteration overprint on top of it, and things are like, what's going on here? So it's very, there's some evidence here of multiple pulses, and really to get some of that understanding, that deep understanding of the project from a geological sense. So we're obviously very, very happy with the results. Again, as a mining engineer, most projects are, for me, what's the size and scale? It doesn't matter if it's, a recent discovery or it's got a feasibility. What gives you an idea of overall size and scale is, that percent meters, right? And so it's equivalent to how many meters at 1%. And that really defines the overall size and scale. So this first hole is over the equivalent of 600 meters at 1%, and so that is extremely exciting. I mean, that's what in that Q1 top best holes in the world type category, and it was one hole, right? And then versus projects that have multiple drill holes. So it's a very exciting start. I think it really demonstrates that this is a significant project. It's still just a baby. There's a lot of work to do on it. It's got a clear pathway to get over 1 billion tons that we'll be working on, in our upcoming drilling programs. So yeah, there's definitely a buzz around that the world will finally be. It's like a rebirthing of the project and presenting it to the planet.
Maybe just that's a great way sometimes to look at things when I'm looking at companies is kind of the size of the prize. And if we look at, I'm here with Ian Harris, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Libero Copper, and we're talking about their initial drill hole was 600 meters of over 1% copper, which is
yeah. Let me qualify that. It's the equivalent. Like if you take, right. So it was basically 1,235 meters with 0.42 percent copper over that entire hole, which is the equivalent of 600 meters at 1%, or it's a percent meter. I mean, there were intersections that were, 840 meters at a 0.72 equivalent copper. I mean, so it's got significant areas of hotness, but it's a really big, consistent mineralization over a very long extent, I think was the point I was trying to make. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, but, obviously a very, a stunning hole by all measures. And I guess, what we try and do is look at develop an overall awareness of the whole company, and clearly, the quality of the project and the quality of the region is something that people should pay attention to. We also look, so we know that we're in a great jurisdiction. We know we've got this amazing project. We've also got, you know, a really strong management team led by yourself and a very strong board. And I guess one of the other things we always look at to develop this overall awareness of the potential is the price. And, you know, I think investors should be aware that, and you can very easily do this by going to, you know, Stock Watch and checking the market capitalization that we talk about, but still a relatively low market cap, Ian. I mean, you guys have done a tremendous job of, you know, you've got like 60 some million shares outstanding, you know, at this price level. Maybe just talk about the, you know, just to wrap up, what the potential size of the prize of this company relative to the current market cap. Because to me, you know, it's a great entry point when you've got this kind of a drill hole and you've got this, you know, this mandate to develop this project, at how big this thing can possibly get.
You know what, over the last year, I gave the presentation. We have significant assets, you know, Alcoa is not the only one. And then at the end of the presentation, especially on the one-to-one meetings, like, you know, Ian, you know, you got a great set of projects, but, you know, it's pretty obvious your flagship is. And the answer would be different every time. You know, it'd be Esperanza, Big Red, Alcoa, right? But I'm not going to lie. I tell everybody, my favorite. I mean, you know, market will just tell me which one is the horse that's going to be the most important, right? But it was Alcoa, and not just because I worked in the same Jurassic Belt and, you know, on the Mirador project, right? But because it's clear, right? The geological risk is dramatically reduced, and it's probably the biggest risk on all projects, right? Is geological, right? You're working on an expansion of an existing resource. You're starting with a valuation that is, it was like it had no value, right? And there's a clear way of demonstrating how you can create value. And for me, the simple comparable, right, for me is Solaris's Warintza, right? They just came out with a resource estimate, right? And they used, and this is important, they used a 0.3 cutoff for the overall resource. They also demonstrated a 0.6 cutoff. This is a copper equivalent cutoff for a kind of a conceptual starter pit type concept. But they also used $3.50 copper, and they used $15 moly. Okay, so to compare that to Alcoa, we obviously use $3 and $10. You have to use their same pricing. Sure. And you also, but, you know, in our same 43-101, we do have a 0.3 cutoff. We do have a 0.6 cutoff, right? And if you look at the resource, right, in terms of grade, using that equivalent copper, right, it comes back that it's almost identical, like 98% equivalent in terms of grade, both for the 0.3 and for the 0.6. That's a good start. Okay, you know, it's a comparable in terms of potential grade and potential starter pit grades. And then part two is we at a 0.3, we're about 550 million tons, and they came up with between inferred and indicated about 1.5 billion tons. So we're about, you know, at 30% the size, right? And then you say, okay, can we get to 1.5 billion tons? And for me, well, that's pretty clear, right? And you don't even have to, right? I mean, we're at 60 million market cap, they're at 1.5 billion market cap, right? Yeah. So even if we're half a project, it's still 750 million. I mean, it's simple math. So does it make sense to invest to increase the resource and advance the Alcoa project? Obviously, right? So that's what I really like. It's not that I have to convince everybody of the value. We just have to start moving the project forward. And now that we're just at least increasing in value, that's what's important to me. I want to just keep continuously adding value to this project, whether it's adding resource, upgrading it, demonstrating its quality, or the environmental, or the social, or the political, the engineering work, whatever it is to take to slowly advance this project. I mean, we know which direction we're going. We know that we want to demonstrate to this world the potential that this can become, you know, a significant mine that the world needs, right? Because of the extreme supply demand crunch that is expected in copper. You know, this is not something that happens overnight, and taking that long-term approach, right, that just continuously keep hammering at it, because we know if we do, we know where that destiny could take us in it, and it obviously creates value for our shareholders.
What a great wrap up, Ian. Thanks a lot. I'm here with Ian Harris, the CEO of Libero Copper. Ian, it's been absolutely great chatting with you. And I have to say, I'm pretty sure the first time I met you was in Beaver Creek down in Colorado. Yeah. And then of course I followed you all the way to Colombia, and Ian was, very helpful getting me around in Colombia, even though he was worried about me taking the four-day car trip. And
just getting lost that worried me.
Yeah, right. And what a great job you've done, Ian. You should be proud. One of the reasons we stuck with our investment and we added more, and we've been recommending the company, is because of your energy and your enthusiasm. Was very apparent in Beaver Creek, and it's even more apparent today. So congratulations on a great drill hole, and we hope to have a lot of fun developing this project or being involved with it as investors along with you. So thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Sherman. It's always nice. Hope to see you again soon. Now that we're getting back to in-person Beaver Creek, and then and in Vancouver, and then PDAC.
Yeah, we'll see you in Vancouver. Thanks, Ian.
Yes, sir.